Look at your skin, right now. Stare at the back of your hand. It feels like nothing, just a covering, a simple envelope you've been told is a label, a flag, a political identity, a reason for tribes to love or to kill. But you've never been taught what it actually is. Your skin is a crime scene, a living, breathing record of a 2 million-year-long murder attempt by the sun. And the exact color you wear, right now, is the compromise your ancestors' bodies made to not be killed by it. But this crime didn't start with color. It started long before pigment. It started with cold-blooded murder in the open plains. To understand why you were almost never born, you need to feel what it was like to lose your armor. For millions of years, our story was safe in the shade. We wore a thick coat of fur. It was our first home, our shield. Every day, the sun smashed against that fur, and underneath we were protected, hidden, invisible to the sky's violence. But the forest died, the planet twisted, and we were pushed out into a hellscape of endless, searing, white-hot light. An animal covered in thick fur in that oven had a simple, horrifying choice: stop to pant and die of heat stroke, or keep moving and overheat until your brain literally cooked inside your own skull. Both paths led to the same end. Your ancestors were being executed by the very air they lived in, suffocated by heat they could not escape. So they took a desperate, insane gamble, a mutation. They began to strip themselves of their only shield, to become naked, vulnerable, exposed, for a single, cruel advantage: a cooling system. Sweat. On bare skin, sweat is liquid air conditioning. It let our kind become the living dead who would not stop walking. Imagine the terror of the prey animal running for its life while this hairless, sweating thing just kept coming, never stopping, never resting, a relentless ghost under the boiling sun. We traded armor for stamina, and it worked. We survived. But the sky was watching, and it saw a body that had torn down its walls. You see, fur is not just shade, it is a light-proof fortress. The moment it was gone, the sun's invisible weapon could finally touch our blood directly, and it did so without a sound, without a warning. The weapon is called ultraviolet radiation, and the first thing it started to do, with terrifying, silent efficiency, was murder our unborn. UV light shreds a fragile little molecule in your blood called folate. Your body needs folate to copy DNA, to close the neural tubes of a growing baby, to build the very architecture of a new human life. Under that brutal, naked equatorial sky, mothers' bodies began to lose pregnancy after pregnancy, repeated, silent, crushing grief. And the babies that did make it were born with their spines open to the raw air, a catastrophe called spina bifida, a child whose very backbone was split before they ever saw light. The future of our entire species was being silently, invisibly assassinated in the womb, generation after generation. Your ancestors' children were dying in droves, their tiny bodies undone by an invisible enemy. That is the first scream of this story, a mother's wail that lasted millennia. But you are here, so someone survived. The question is, what unholy shield did evolution forge from the bodies of those dead children? The answer was hiding inside the cells of the skin itself, a dark, granular pigment called melanin. Do not think of it as a color. Think of it as a tiny biological blast shield that sacrifices itself. It captures ultraviolet photons and scatters their energy as harmless heat before they can ever reach the folate swimming in your veins. It absorbs the blow and dies so the deeper tissues can live. The bodies that could produce more of this melanin, packing it into every single skin cell, like dark microscopic chainmail, were the bodies whose babies survived. It was a simple, agonizing equation. A fraction too little melanin and your child's spine does not close. Just enough melanin and you leave a descendant who carries your design forward. That is not fashion. That is not a preference. That is a filter of life and death so cruelly precise it defies comprehension. So, near the equator, under the unblinking, pitiless eye of a murderous sun, dark skin was born. It was not a type of human. It was not a race. It was the first sunscreen, the most successful, most life-saving technological trade our species has ever seen. It was a mother's body, scarred by loss after loss, finally learning how to shroud her young in protection so deep it looked like night. That deep, rich brown you see on another human being is the color of a long-forgotten victory over extinction. It is a monument to the babies that finally lived. But the sun is a jealous killer with two faces. And as a few brave, traumatized bands of survivors stumbled out of Africa into a dark, frozen gray world, the very shield that had been their salvation began to kill them in a brand new, slower, even more horrifying way. It started to starve them from the inside by trapping out the only light they now desperately needed to make a single, critical molecule. To make vitamin D, your body requires a very specific slice of that solar weapon called UVB. In a frozen northern swamp, under a permanent low blanket of cloud that doesn't lift for months, the sun is a pale, weak ghost. It offers almost nothing, and the magnificent, dark, thick shield that had been a baby's savior in Africa now became a prison wall, blocking nearly all of that faint, precious light. Without vitamin D, you cannot absorb calcium, and a body without calcium begins to die in a slow, skeletal collapse. I need you to feel this. Imagine your own skeleton, the solid frame of everything you are, starting to turn soft, like wax held too near a flame. Feel the deep, throbbing ache in your bones as they bend under your own weight. Your legs aching and bowing outward into twisted, painful arcs. Your ribs becoming deformed, pressing on your lungs. A mother's pelvis, the very sacred gateway of life, calcifying incorrectly, soft, misshapen, useless. When she went into labor, there was no way out. The baby stuck in a crushing, deformed vise of bone. Mother and child dying together in unimaginable agony because their skin was too strong for the weak, merciless sun. That scream is different, colder, but just as loud. A scream that echoed through the frozen mud huts of our northern ancestors. And so, in these lands of weak light, the same ruthless equation simply flipped. A child born with a tiny bit less melanin, a slightly thinner shield, could finally catch a few precious life-giving photons of UVB. They could make just enough vitamin D for their legs to harden straight and true, for their spine to hold them upright against gravity, for a woman's pelvis to form a safe, open passage for new life. Lighter skin is not about distance from the African continent. It is about distance from death by rickets. It is a map of a different kind of screaming, a different kind of starving, carved into the flesh of northern mothers and their children. Across the planet, simultaneously, two different kinds of mothers were mourning two different kinds of dead children, their bodies sculpted by the same ruthless light, just in opposite directions. So now you have suffered both deaths that carved your color into existence, the death of the unshielded in the south, the death of the unlit in the north. Now, look down at your own arm for the final, unbearable truth. Every single shade of skin on this planet is just a point on a dial between two forms of unbearable suffering. You are not black, you are not white. Those are lies whispered by empires and kings to build a hierarchy on biology's grave. You are the exact, mathematically perfect compromise your ancestors' bodies found to survive the specific angle of light falling on a specific patch of dirt they called home. Your color is not a flag to wave in a culture war. It is a fossil. It is the shadow of ice ages survived, of deserts crossed, of children who finally, against all odds, drew breath. The person standing next to you, whose skin seems so different from yours, their ancestors just negotiated a different deal with the same murderous star. Their mother's body just solved the same brutal physics problem with a different number on the melanin dial. The suffering was identical. The terror of losing a child was identical. The will to not be killed by the sky was identical. So the next time you see your skin, do not see a color, see a scar. A 2-million-year-old life or death compromise that allowed a fragile, naked, sweating ape to walk out of one sun into another and not just survive, but become you. It is not proof that we are different. It is the physical, cellular, screaming proof that we all belong to the same brutal, beautiful, single family of survivors. We have just seen how your skin is an ancient scar, a silent, desperate negotiation with a murderous star that let your ancestors survive. But your skin is not the only place where a deadly biological truth is hiding. Inside your veins, written in a handful of sugars and proteins, is a code you were born with. And what it says about the way your life will most likely end, the specific disease, the type of organ failure, even the kind of catastrophe your body is silently preparing for right now, is something almost no one knows. So watch this next video, Your Blood Type Predicts How You Die, and uncover the terrifying but vital truth your blood has been hiding since the day you were born.